You're going to go over budget. So always have a contingency and just enjoy the process. So
Yeah.
it's not based on price, it's based on the best material for that particular job.
Welcome to the Self Builders Podcast, the podcast that covers everything you need to know to get on the way to building your own house. We're brought to you by Mayflower Mortgage and Finance, the self-building finance specialist in the UK.
And boom, we're back in. Welcome back to the Self Builders Podcast by Mayflower Mortgage and Finance. I'm your host, Sam Taylor. As always, with Mike. How you doing, Mike?
Yeah, all good, Sam. Thank you.
Good stuff. Good stuff. This week on the podcast, we have got special guests. We've got Sanjay. How's it going, Sanjay? You well?
I'm all good, thank you. Good to be here.
Good stuff.
It's really good to have you, Sanjay.
Yeah, excellent. And
I'm
Sanjay,
looking forward to this one.
Yeah, really looking forward because Sanjay is a self-builder who's been on the journey that many of our listeners will be either on or looking to embark on themselves. And we're hoping to dig a little deeper into his journey and understand, just maybe some tips and advice, a bit of information around your kind of own personal journey on there. What inspired you to build your own home and some of the challenges that maybe came with it so that our listeners can then maybe avoid some of the pitfalls that you were in. How does that sound?
Sounds good.
Good man. Good
Sanjay,
man.
can you start by just giving us an idea of what you've built, what your project, so everyone can just see it in their mind's eye and they get an idea of what the project looks like, and then we can dig into the journey from there.
Okay. I've built a house which is right on the edge of the woods near Woburn in a place called Aspley Heath, Woburn Sands. It's like in that sort of triangle there. It's 6,000 square foot and it's on about half an acre. And
Nice.
I have loads of huge trees around me. Loads of huge trees.
Awesome. So look at the bit, 6,000 square foot. Is it, so what's the outer skin? I'm just trying to paint a picture for everyone.
So I've done a traditional build. So it's all bricks and mortar, very large windows everywhere, and balconies, 2 balconies on the front, a round balcony on the back as well. Double fronted. It's very symmetrical, and bay windows downstairs, and then above the bay windows we've got balconies on the first floor for my son and my dad's bedroom, and then across the whole back of the house, the majority of the back of the house is the master bedroom, which has, I don't know, it's just a huge bedroom.
For everyone listening, I've obviously seen it, and it's a lovely project. It looks awesome. From the photos that I've seen, like, you must be over the moon with it now you're in.
Yeah, I am. I think when you do the original designs, when you actually start doing the work, it evolves, and you've just got to be prepared for that, and then just make changes. I went through planning a couple of times during the process to make changes, and it was a relatively painless process. And in some cases, I took risks, and I bought materials to continue the project when I didn't have planning for what I was doing.
This sounds interesting already. So let's go back to sort of finding the plot then, Sanjay, and the planning. So when you were looking for a home to build, how did you go about finding your plot? Because that is usually the bit that most people say to us, it's taken me a year, 2 years, 3 years to find where I want to build and find the plot.
For me, it was a little bit different. So I was looking for a house to renovate, to extend, to put my own stamp on it. And I looked for about a year and a half. I was putting letters through doors, knocking on doors. I was really canvassing, trying to find the right house because I wanted something very specific in a very specific area. And this plot came up for sale on a Thursday evening, and I was viewing a house with that same agent the following morning, and that's Jackson Stops in Woburn. And as soon as I viewed the house, which was coincidentally somebody else's self-build, I asked him to bring me to this plot, and he showed me the plot, and immediately, as soon as I'd seen it, I said, I'll take it. And my wife took me to a side and she said, "Do you think we should talk about this?" And I said, "Babe, we should buy this." And she was like, "Are you sure?" And I was like, "Yeah, it'll be fine." And then they said, and then I said, I'll give you the asking price for it." And he said, "It's not an asking price, it's a guide price, and you're going to need to offer above, and it will go to best and final offers."
Okay. Was there a bit of a bidding war for the plot?
So I ended up putting pressure on the agent because I would have either bought the house that we viewed or I would have bought this plot.
Right.
And I said to them, I need a decision as soon as possible. So I pressured them into going to best and final offers straight away. So this was now the Thursday, and then we went to best and final offers on the following Tuesday. So there was like 4 or 5 days. So I pressured them into doing that, and then I just offered massively more than the guide price. So I offered about over 20% more than the guide price, purely because I didn't want to lose the plot. Some opportunities don't come up very often, and when you work the numbers back, it can help you make a decision on whether to buy it or not. And sometimes you'll be making money, sometimes you won't. But if it's the right plot in the right place, I just didn't want to take the risk. And it was only afterwards I found out that I probably paid 50 or 60 grand more than the nearest offer, but I'm not bothered. I felt it was the right decision and it just weren't worth the risk.
I think when you're buying to build to live in as well, it's a motive, isn't it? Like if you're going to live in that property and you want that specific location, price is relevant really to a certain extent.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I don't want to be in the Reds.
No, I understand what you mean.
But I think, yeah, once you found that plot, and I found this plot, and the other guys that were bidding against me, people were going to turn it into blocks of flats, and there was a lot of potential for this site. And I have probably wasted the site because it could have been built into so much more. But for me, and the proximity to the high street and the pubs and the restaurants and the schools, it was just the perfect location for me. And it's on a really nice road, which I love driving down. And it's right next to the golf club and right next to the bike park. And it's where I spend a lot of time anyway. So there was no one who was going to outbid me on that.
So on finding the plot then, really, it was like pretty quick for you in the sense of you were looking for something else and it popped up and it was just opportunistic and you went, got to have it, rather than looking for land for 3 years or whatever.
Yeah, so when I got it under offer, I said I'd exchange in a month, and I exchanged in a month, and then I needed to delay the completion to get the rest of the money, and the solicitor I used I knew really well, and so I just delayed the completion for 2 months or 3 months after exchange, and then I completed a few months later, and it was all fine.
So on the planning front then, if we move in the process of the sort of self-build journey down to the planning side of things, you said that you changed it a little bit and you bought things up front for stuff that you didn't have agreed. How did that work with sort of what was agreed initially and any issues you've had, top tips you could give people going into planning, or any positives? We don't hear many positives, to be fair, on the local authorities, but I know sometimes they're really good.
Yeah, they can be good. I mean, I certainly didn't have any issues, but I bought the land with planning. So it already had planning permission for the same footprint.
Yeah.
All I did was just redesign minor parts of it. And even my engineer, AP Engineers in Flitwick, a guy called Paul Allen, I've worked with him before on other projects, and we just did it in stages, because if you ask for too many changes on an existing planning, then they can ask you for planning again, and that was the last thing I wanted to do because I wanted to get on with it. So I just made subtle changes, changes to the windows, changes to the style, changes to the inside, didn't add any square foot, and that's how I did it here. And then on another application, I made some changes to the balconies, and then on another application, I then added the second floor, which added obviously huge amounts of square footage. So, it went from sort of 4,500 to 6,000 on the last application. When you say I didn't get planning, so I bought all the dormer windows and paid for them and had them delivered, and it slipped my mind about the planning, and I was just full steam ahead. And then they got delivered, and I thought I better get planning for those, and then I submitted the application, and but I know the planning rules, and I
Yeah,
knew it would be fine, so it was a calculated risk.
yeah,
But if I didn't get a planning, then I would have lost about 12 grand and more in 12 grand on the dormer window sections alone, let alone all the bits in the roofing that would need to be amended. But yeah, no, it's fine. Yeah, the council were brilliant. They didn't really question anything that I asked for because it was nothing untoward.
yeah.
My neighbours, I spoke to about what I was doing before I did it, and just kept the relationship with them. And if they had any questions, I was more than happy to help.
So on the planning then, Sanjay, were you doing sort of amendments to the original application and then putting in maybe a new submission for the balconies and just edging it sort of
Always,
where you wanted it to go?
always minor amendments. So the first one was
Okay.
minor amendments to the windows.
Yeah.
And sort of the design and not the shape or anything like that.
Yeah, yeah.
The design of the way the house looked. And then the second amendment was to remove the bay windows on the first floor and turn them into balconies.
Got you.
And then the next amendment was then to put the dormer windows in on the top floor, 6 dormer windows on the top floor.
That's a top tip for people because most of our customers at Mayflower will usually have some sort of planning agreed, and usually it will need to be changed particularly if people are building their own home. They want it to suit what they want. So that's a real top tip, I think, for people to take away.
Understanding between minor and major changes as well, and understanding the authority that you're in and how kind of lenient they are to those kind of things, I guess would be useful to know as well. Huh?
I think the advice from a very good engineer or somebody who knows about planning is really important because I wouldn't have known. But my engineer, as I said, was really up to date with the legislation and said it would be fine all along, and it was. But you're still paranoid until you've got that bit of paper. You're still going to be paranoid.
I get it. I get it completely.
But I do trust him, and he was brilliant all along the way. So there was so many things that we needed to keep asking from an engineering front, and just to have him at the end of the phone when I needed him was really important.
It's interesting you say that, because I do think people, especially at the early stages, don't necessarily think about the engineering of a project. It's more about the design.
Yeah. So the engineering is very important, but understanding it when you've never done this before, it just looks like a load of cool pictures to me. And I just thought, wow, they look amazing. And then it's only when you start getting into the nitty gritty and then you actually start understanding what all of the little sections mean. I mean, I could read any sort of engineering plan now, whereas 2-3 years ago, I wouldn't have had a clue. And I didn't have a clue at all.
So on the planning, everything seems to have gone all right. Local authority were good. No issues, no delays.
They might have taken a little bit longer.
Yeah.
This in 2 months, and I think as long as you're nice to people, they're generally nice to you. So I didn't break their balls, so to speak. I phone them and I just say, "Oh, how's it going? And is there anything else you need from me? And it's really important I get this done as soon as possible, just so I can sort of move forward and just give them the story about why I bought it and why I was doing the project." And people sometimes are interested. Some people don't really care, but sometimes people are interested and they'll listen to you and you listen to them. And as long as you're nice to people, then I'd hope they'd be nice back. And that's certainly the experience I had with the local authority.
So that's a top takeaway for dealing with planning officers for sure. I think
they're just normal people. They do a hard job, and they don't need people really getting on their back about stuff, because it's not really that much of a big deal to be a week late or whatever. I mean, obviously, I don't want them to be a big week late, but I'm not going to get angry at someone or tell someone off for being a week late. You just phone them and just ask them if they can do it sooner rather than later, and you'd really appreciate it. There's nothing wrong with that. You're not asking them for anything which is bad. You're just being nice. That's what I'd say.
So when you got going then, Sanjay, planning's in, or you're putting in for what you need to agree. How did you go about getting a contract? Or I'll tell you what, let's take a step back. Obviously we've worked together, so I understand sort of how the project was working. But could tell everyone how it was managed, or how involved you were or not involved, and then we'll go from there.
Right. So as soon as I got the plot under offer, I had 3 builders in mind to do the work, and there's a couple of brother-in-laws that I know really well. They did my house in St Albans. Never done a project like this before, so I was really interested in them. And then there's a local company called Next Generation. They do great builds around sort of Hertfordshire, Bedfordshire, Buckinghamshire. So it's between these 2 companies, and in the end, I did a deal with Dan and Ellie, which are the 2 brother-in-laws. Never done a project like this before, but I just really get along with these guys.
Yeah,
they're just got an eye for detail, and they won't cut any corners. And the deal was that I got the materials, sorted out all the materials, managed the project, and they would build and do everything. But obviously, they would question stuff, and then I would get the answers for them. But they worked with Paul before, which is from AP Engineering. They'd worked with Paul before when I did the project in St Albans. They knew him, and then after we'd finished that project, they carried on using Paul for projects they were doing for other clients.
Got you.
But convincing, it was a bit, because they looked at the project, they were like, wow, they were like, this is a big project, we've not done anything like this before. And I just said to them, look, I trust you guys, and you've got to think, when is someone going to give you the opportunity to build something like this again? So I said, look, I want you to do it. So I said, if you want to do it, it's up to you. And they were like, well, we definitely want to do it. And we'd agreed a price and everything. But understandably, they were a bit anxious at first. But as soon as they were on site, these guys were machines. Fantastic. Couldn't follow them.
Obviously, you've picked them because you got to feel like they're good people, and you knew their work. But was there a price thing as well, Sanjay, giving them that step up in the development space? Have you got maybe a slightly better deal commercially, let's say, than you would with another company, or was it just the fact that you knew them, trusted them?
I had cheaper quotes.
Okay.
But if I'm managing the materials and choosing the materials myself, I can get what I think is the best materials.
Got you.
So
yeah.
It's not based on price, it's based on the best material for that particular job. And if I'm managing that part, then at least I know that I'm putting the right materials in, and I've got the right guys putting it together. So yeah.
Sanjay, were you managing sort of all the drops to site and everything, and the deliveries on the materials, the returns, and all that?
Oh God, that was a pain in the ass.
I'd say that was a yes.
Yeah. I lived around the corner from the site, so when we bought the site, I said to my wife, right, we'll get a caravan and we'll move on to it. She was like, definitely not. So that was when we made the call to you, Mike, to get the mortgage. So
you did have to know the car got you.
I couldn't sell my other house until we'd finished this and moved in here. So that was when we linked with you, Mike, and we put the deal together for the mortgage and everything. So we had the stages to release the money to build the house and everything.
Sanjay, have you got any tips for? Have you got any tips for people that are doing what you're doing with managing the materials? Because it's a great way to, if you want to be project managing, but it's a lot to take on. I haven't done it with sort of making sure deliveries are right, and if they're not right, then reordering and sending returns and all that. It's quite a bit to manage if you haven't done it before. You got any like little top tips that might help people?
Yeah, so I dealt with a few companies around here. I'm not going to say the bad ones,
Fair enough.
but I made some orders with some companies which were not, their deliveries weren't on time, deliveries were wrong, and I'll always give somebody a chance to sort out the problems that they've made. And it's when they can't resolve the issues or they fail to resolve the issues that I'll cut them off to a certain extent. Again, I'm not going to be bad to someone just because it's probably out of their hands, but I need to work with competent people
Yeah.
who can sort out the issues. It's easy to order something and deliver it. That's fine. Anyone can do that. But it's when there's an issue, you need the guy at the other end of the phone to be able to sort out the problem. So initially I was using a firm. I tried 2 different companies that were recommended to me, and I was just having a nightmare with them, with the deliveries, and then trying to sort out the returns and everything. And then in the end, my wife was at a park with one of my sons, and she was speaking to a lady who was like, "Oh, my husband is the director of a local builders merchant," and she was like, "I'll put you in touch with him." So then she put us in touch with this guy. His name's David Walsh. So he owns a franchise of MKM. I think it's a franchise.
Oh, MKM, yeah, they're really big. I know those guys.
Milton Keynes. So then from there on, I met Dave, and then I did a few orders with him, and the whole purchase process, the invoicing, the payment, getting the materials there on time and everything was on point straight away. So then there were options where I could have got cheaper materials from elsewhere, but
Hassle
based on the
factor of
service-
service not being right, I suppose,
Yeah.
built into that, doesn't it? Yeah.
Exactly, and don't get me wrong, not all of his materials were perfect, but if there was an issue, then he was on the case and he would help me sort out the issue. So we became quite close. Like for 2 years, we're on the phone to each other daily. We still speak to each other now, you know. So, and his grandson is actually really good mates with my son, which was a coincidence afterwards when they started school. So the families are actually quite intertwined now, but it's all through minor coincidences, I would say.
So what you're saying is to find your builder's merchant, get down to the park, and start speaking to people.
Yeah, take some cans with you. No. So, but yeah, it's you've got to be able to trust your builder's merchant and have a competent person at the other end of the phone. And luckily for me, he was brilliant. And I found him about 6 months into the build. But the trial ones were a pain.
Yeah, so that, I suppose, getting someone who works with you is another top tip. Can I fire something your way, Sam and Sanjay? Because I don't think we've talked about this yet, Sam. I had a chat with a guy about a month ago, and they've just raised some capital and they've started a software company. Having just sort of built your own place, I just wondered what you thought of this. So the guys have got a software package where you can put in your quantified schedule, and they'll tender all of the line items from the software package to the merchants within whatever area you stipulate as a customer. And I think they've got like a service level agreement with them that they'll get a return on every item within 3 hours. And it's like the amount of merchants they've got is ridiculous. So, you know, a lot of the larger firms and some of the sort of smaller provincial family-run, sold, you know, owner-occupied ones. And then you get all of the tenders back for every line item on your quantified schedule through this bit of software. Would that have been useful for you? Because when he was talking to me about it, I was like, that's like saves a month potentially or weeks of a QS potentially costing every item at different merchants to get you the best price.
Are you asking me that?
Yeah. What do you think, Sanjay?
Yeah, it could be useful, and I probably would have tried it at the beginning. But having found a merchant that I was happy with, and don't get me wrong, I did double check all of his prices and got quotes from other places. But I think I needed things quickly sometimes, and and just having them there. And then it's a bit like a barber. Do you know where you, all of us are bald, but
I was just thinking this is going to be a terrible analogy with us two.
when
Not
we
the
have,
best one to use.
you get your hair cut by someone, you get your beard trimmed by someone, and then you go somewhere else, and then you go back to them. You feel like you've cheated on them. And I had that kind of mindset. So he trusted me as much as I trusted him.
Yeah.
And I think I would have felt like I was cheating on him a bit. But I did, as I said, change. So I did check with different companies and see if there was better products out there. And if there were better products, I would try to source them through him. And in some cases, when I went through him, when I'd found the product, he could get a better price than me, because he was a builder's merchant, and he would still make his margin. And it was cheaper than what I could get it direct, because I'm not going to buy loads of stuff.
Yeah.
So
there's almost that cost association around peace of mind as well, isn't there? You know, when you're juggling so much on such an epic scale as you would have been throughout this, having people that you can trust, merchants that you can trust, where that transparency and that communication is bang on, then that's got a cost association in itself, hasn't it? You know.
Yeah. It was like having, and he was an invaluable, a very valuable resource. So he's been a builder's merchant for 20, 30 years. I don't know, very long time. I know it's been a very long time. So he actually had information about products that I'd never heard of, my builders had never heard of, that he would recommend. And then my builder's very stuck in his ways, very old school. Everything has to be done properly or over-engineered. And he would even call my engineer and say, I think this needs to be stronger, or I want to put a double lintel here.
Yeah.
And my engineer would most of the time just say, yeah, that's fine, you know. And so it's very hard to get my builders to do certain things that were different, but then they turned out to be new things that he now does. Just so you know, like my builder from doing my job has now moved on to doing my friend's house in Rickmansworth. I'm sure I put him in contact with you as well, Mike.
Let's not say his name live, but
he's doing sort of 4.5 or 5,000 square foot in Rickmansworth now, and so my builders have gone on from doing my project to a similarly sized project with a basement going towards London now. So I think it's changed their whole business. It was a good stepping stone from them.
Yeah. Word of mouth's the best form of advertising, isn't it, for any business, really?
Yeah.
Think.
So my mate would come around here and see them, and then I said he went straight there afterwards, and they finished here, and then just went straight over there, and as I said, they're just completing the basement now. So it looks stunning.
And your guys did everything all the way through, Sanjay? Same builders looked after sort of the fit out, first fix, second fix?
My initial contract was just for the build. And I think they got so invested in the project and wanting things done properly.
Right.
They kept saying, look, you're going to get to this stage and you need to sort out somebody to do it. We'll quote on it and get some other quotes and then come back and talk to us. And I'll be honest with you, I did get other quotes, and even when I'd say the majority of the time, they were probably slightly more expensive. So I know they weren't the cheapest builders, but I wanted quality, and these guys wanted to do everything because they'd never done anything this size before. So they put their heart and soul into this, and when they left, it was like their house. And do you know, when I'd walk in, they'd be like, "Oh, Sanjay, take your shoes off." Like, even when the inspectors would come to their house, and they'd be like, "This is the cleanest site we've ever seen." So they'd always have someone cleaning up after them, and it was that kind of mentality that I wanted. And they've done that before for me, so I knew they were like that. So I think it was really important that they were, they did everything. And we had stages where we had companies come in to do like the treads for the stairs and just did an awful job. And in the end, he just said...
They jumped in.
And they were like, look, get it taken away. They said, we're not having that. Get it taken away. They said, it's awful. But I didn't. I said to the company that did the work, I said, come back and try to fix it. And I gave them 3 opportunities to do it. And in the end, I said to them, look, it's too much now. You're going to have to come and take the stuff away. And they'd caused so much damage. And I didn't say to them,
Wow.
you're going to pay for the damage. I just said, I want my money back. And they said that was fine. And they never paid me back. But luckily, tip for you, always pay by credit card. And the credit card paid me back. But they never paid me back and ignored my calls and stuff. But my builder ended up doing all of the stairs, the treads, and just, well, he spent so much time. I mean, some of the detail that he put into doing it, he was like, I'm going to use a skirting board. And I was like, how are you going to curve a skirting board? And he said, well, I'm going to cut tiny little slices.
I've had someone do that for me, yeah.
And then he goes, what we're going to do is we'll get your so I had another decorator here, a guy called Misa, and he's done painting and decorating for my rentals for years. It's brilliant, but really slow. And he just went round meticulously filling every little gap and made it look like a curve. And then working together, again, it was their work ethic which made our painters, our handymen, our electricians, our plumbers, because they work so hard, it makes the people around them work really hard as well. And so it's that work ethic on site which resonated throughout the whole build. And it was amazing to see.
It feels like, from what you said in the last 20 minutes, Sanjay, people is the biggest thing. Like, get people you trust to work with you, and it makes life a lot easier. That's like literally the biggest message I can see, and pay by credit card, obviously.
100%. And the thing is, you're going to make mistakes. There are going to be people you don't like on site. There are going to be people that are rubbish, and you've just got to try and manage them and then get them to finish it. And sometimes you're going to have to get it redone again. It's a fact. It's not going to be all perfect, but you just sometimes have to do that. And what you can do is you can moan about it, you can cry about it, or you can just take it all out, start again. That's what I ended up doing on a number of occasions.
Wow.
How long have you been in now,
Thanks
Sanjay?
for coming on, Sanjay. Sorry, Sam.
I was just going to say, how long have you been in? How long has it all been completed for now, Sanjay?
I literally got sign-off about a month ago, and I got my warranty about 2 weeks ago. So that was a pain. The hardest process is that, I'd say, is managing the building control and stuff. But we actually moved in around August time. So when we sold our house, and it was perfect time, and we sold our house and then moved in August, and then the house was all complete. We just needed furniture because we've come from 1,500 square foot to 6,000. So all our furniture is tiny, and we just needed bigger furniture, which we ended up getting. I mean, I'm talking to you now, and I'm sitting on I've got my office, and it's a lovely office, but I've got a Costco plastic desk. So I've got no desks or anything yet. So there's still a lot to buy. But yeah, these good old Costco folding plastic desks.
Do the trick.
So,
have you invested in a decent leaf blower as well? You talk about all these massive trees. When they drop, it's months of work, right? I'll feel your pain.
Don't talk to me about trees and leaves. If you ever buy a house in the woods, I've got a leaf blower, which is good, and I didn't get a cheap one.
Yeah.
But I would clear the driveway and the gardens and stuff, and the next morning it would all be back again.
Yeah.
And that carries on for months.
Yeah.
It's like a full-time job every evening throughout the whole of autumn, picking up leaves. And then in Bedfordshire, they stop collecting green waste for 3 months. So then I just piled it all up in an area of woods that I've got, and I'm still putting it in the green bins now. So
before you come on, Sanjay, Sam was saying, do you know what? I've spent 20 hours in the last 4 weeks just getting leaves out of my garden. Honestly.
I'm not sure if you can see. Maybe if I tilt this, there's a very small glimpse out there. As I'm surrounded by 300, 400, 500-year-old trees, giant copper birches that are hundreds of feet tall. Beautiful to look at. Peacocks roosting in them, all very exotic. Until autumn time, and then it's like, get out there with your leaf blower. It's a nightmare. It really is. And the pond, we've just sort of like cleaned out the pond, and I found out that leaves will be at the bottom of that, and that will strangle all the lilies and everything. So I've been in the pond as well, sort of down to my elbows, digging out leaves and everything. Yeah. Yeah, it's a
Well,
labour
everything
of
goes
love.
green if you're in the.
Yeah.
It is, yeah. And if you're in the woods, everything goes green. So I had this dream of having that burnt wood, that Japanese burnt wood.
Yeah.
And my builder was like, he said, that's just going to go green. And I thought I was going to render some of the house. And they were like, it's just going to go green.
Yeah.
And in the end, I used hardy plank, which does look nice. But
Yeah,
it's
it does look good.
cement board instead of the
Yeah.
burnt wood. But yeah, the wood, the leaves are Sam. I feel your pain. You know, we might have to get together every autumn. I take it out to each other's houses. Get it done half the time.
We
Leaves
could
are
do
a pain.
top trump leaf collection. We could,
Yeah,
sounds brilliant.
Thanks for coming
definitely.
on, Sanjay. Appreciate it. Honestly, I think there'll be people that will get like a value out of that. And if it saves somebody some time, some money, some stress, yeah, it's worth that 20-minute chat. Appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, I think anyone who's planning on doing it, you just got to get on with it. You're going to go over budget, so always have a contingency and just
Yeah.
enjoy the process. As I said, there will be people, and it's going to get annoying sometimes. But you know what? You just got to keep your chin up, and just go full steam ahead and just get it done and just keep smiling.
Yeah,
And,
I love that.
you
One thing that you said really resonated, and I was going to call out at the end of this as a bit of a top tip, is just that being nice to people. It's going to be stressful. It's going to test your boundaries. It's going to test relationships. But then having a pop at your builder about something that's maybe not in their control isn't really going to get you much further. So I really like that. Be nice to people. That's I like that a lot.
Just one last thing. Yeah, I mean, you do have to mediate as well because your builders are going to argue with your plumbers, and your plumbers are going to argue with your electricians, and your electricians are going to, and it's there you've got to get in between and mediate as well. I mean, I can remember like our scaffolders almost walking off site, and don't get me wrong, my scaffolders were amazing. ACG scaffolding, they were a different level, and what they created here in terms of my scaffolding was groundbreaking. They're featured in magazines and stuff. And they were going to walk off site just because of some certain changes, and they were arguing, having a full-on argument with the builders. And then I just said, look, you guys have a chat about how we're going to solve this problem. I'll take the builders away. We'll have a chat about it. And I said, even speak to the 16-year-old scaffolder because he may come up with the idea which is going to solve this, you know. But I said, we'll all meet up in an hour. We're going to go and have a coffee, and then we'll have a meet up in an hour. And then we'll have a talk about it. And then just get everyone away from that situation because it can be quite toxic. So once you're away and you've had time to sort of think about it, and then you come back and then you just got to say, so what did you come up with? This is what we came up with. And then you just try to find a way that everyone's happy with it. And in the end, my scaffolders put up this, 15 or 16 metre freestanding scaffold, which was, I didn't want it tied into the house. It was held down by 16 water butts, and then we shrink wrapped the whole thing so we could work throughout the whole of winter. So we wanted to work, not 24/7, but we wanted to work throughout the winter. And I didn't want my bricks going white or it getting too wet. So we shrink wrapped the whole building. So
I love
in this big white box. And everyone in the local area was like, I wonder what's going on in there, I wonder what's going on in there. And no one knew, you know. And it was only when it came down about a year and a half ago that people were like, oh my God, that was under there, you know.
Yeah.
But it was the talk of the town, you know. No one knew what was inside this big white box. So
Love that.
That's it. Cling film's going to sell out now. Sainsbury's will be empty. The shelves will be clear. Cling film's gone.
Yeah, the shrink wrap was brilliant. If you're going to work through the winter and you're doing the roof and stuff throughout the winter, because it depends when you start.
Yeah.
The shrink wrap I thought was worth the money, and it keeps it bone dry.
Time as well, isn't it? I suppose. Like you can crack on.
If there's a little leak or something, you let them know. They'll come and patch it up. It's no big deal. They just come and patch it up. As I said, ACG scaffolding, Matt and Vicky there were brilliant, really, really good. So I said I worked with some really good people. So I think that's important.
Work with good people, be nice, pay by credit card. Get a good leaf blower if you've got trees.
Yes. A good engineer who
and
understands local
little
legislation.
amendments on planning. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cheers, Sanjay.
I think the mortgage company, what you sorted out in terms of our mortgage, we used Ecology, as you know,
Yeah.
and the drawdown of payments was very quick. So whenever we needed money, we would just literally phone them up, fill out a form, it was there the next day. So that was really useful for us. And then having building control, doing the warranty and the building control at the same time is really important. And take photos of absolutely everything. Because they'll tell you they don't want photos, and it's only when they want to do the sign off that, oh, can you send me a photo of this?
Yeah. I can't come. Yeah.
And you need it. So take photos of everything.
Top tip again. Cheers,
Sanjay,
Sanjay. That's been an awesome half an hour.
Yeah, there's so much value in this. I think that people are going to listen and rewind and listen again and rewind, because there's all sorts in here. So thank you so much for
When they need to go to sleep, maybe after, I don't know.
Yeah, I was going to do an Instagram page for it because everybody does that.
Yeah.
So I did set one up called Woburn_build on Instagram, but I put some stuff on Facebook, and the stuff that came back, and people were like, "Oh, health and safety this," and I just couldn't be bothered to deal with it at the time.
Really?
So I thought, I'm not going to put anything on the internet until I've finished and I've got sign off. So at some point, I'll start posting now, and then do the journey from the end. So I'll show the finished article and then start from the beginning, and then people can question me. But if people want to message me on there, they're more than welcome to.
That's awesome. Go on, Sanjay. What was the handle again?
It's Woburn_build.
Woburn.
But it just says coming soon on there. And it's been like that for about 3 years. So it will come soon.
Building the anticipation.
But as I said, I'm happy to help.
Cheers, Sanjay. I think that's the pod. Thanks, chaps.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Sanjay. Really appreciate that. And Mike, I'll see you for the next one.
Yep. See you for the next one, Sam. Thanks, Sanjay.
Look after
Cheers,
yourself.
guys.
Take care.